Broadcasting, okay. Broadcasting is really fun. Like there's a lot of bullshit going on in YouTube. And I'm 26 years old, former anarcho-punk, played for bands such as Hate Now, the first anarcho-punk band in Brazil. Later on for Guerra, which I think by far was the best band I played in. Still alive, this band. So his songs are still alive, but we just do a couple things. We don't worry too much about music. And we have a lot going on, so we don't like this type of stage band. We just do some social lessons every once in a while to keep up with our history and for good importance. But I had other projects and bands, and later on we can look about it. I'm just right now focused on talking about the history of punk rock. And some things are very, very, very interesting about this history of punk rock in Sao Paulo. Okay, so here's the deal. By the end of the 70s, we had a couple of bands in Brazil already playing punk rock and even some faster styles, which could be considered as thrash or hardcore. And bands such as Innocence, Restos de Nada, Cólera, Conductores de Cadáveres, Invasores de Cérebros, uh, Coiotes Malditos, DZK. This all in São Paulo, right? In the great region of the ABC, which is the industrial area of São Paulo, one of the most developed places in the state, and like some others from the south side of São Paulo, the east side, and the north side. The narco-punk movement comes later on in the history of Brazilian punk rock scene, but now it doesn't come as a vertent, as a sub-branch of the punk rock culture. I mean, not purely, because hardcore brought new changes and new perspectives to music in Brazil. So a lot of the guys whom I used to hang out with, we were not punks, not at all, not punk rockers. We assimilated some of the look outside the features of dressing and the spikes and the tartan skirts hanging down from our waist. Was really cool. And tight pants with military boots, like the combat boots, some spiked hair and even colorful hair, some safety pants on the jacket, like the stereotypical convenient cliche of punk rock dressing was a very fun thing to do in the time we began the anarcho-punk scene in São Paulo. That scene came out of the hardcore scene, which was totally different and apart from the punk rock scene. In terms of ideology, like punk rock in São Paulo was a very, very political movement. But the people who participated in the punk rock scene, they didn't make a logical link between the things they say, like the political struggles, the political ideas they didn't put in practice, such as the hardcore scene that came later on. There were hardcores already by the beginning of the 80s, bands such as Restos de Porão, Armageddon, Tropa Suicida, which is not quoted as a hardcore band in São Paulo, right? Tropa Suicida would be his skinhead band. And there were a couple of them like hanging out in the punk scene because at that time the punk rock movement and the hardcore movement was very tolerant to different manifestations of cultures. And it didn't, regardless of their ideology, like it didn't mean to be a very political movement. But the contestatory movement that expressed in lyrics, in music, um, but they allowed to the fact that they had a reality to deal with in Brazil. Like the very end of the like military dictatorship, Many of the punk rockers I met still got the taste of, like torture and persecution, and then you can join a group and go around the streets and make a meeting, a gathering in a public place, in a park. So the military was very, very intransigent against the social movement, and the punk rock scene came right in to shock against the military uh, structure or the military influences in the structure of the Brazilian political organization. That's what I meant. So when the thing became hardcore and then turned into anarcho-punk, the scene had suffered a very great change. And the history is different here in Brazil than it is, of course, from the history in any other country. Uh, it is not so rough as it was in the Eastern Europe. Oh boy, it was fucking rough. Like plenty of wars going on. The young people trying to seek for a meaningful culture to express their feelings of what was happening in the midst of a society who was eventually in battle, in war. Like there were communists coming from the extreme east, fundamentalists coming from the Middle East, and the Christian right wing invasion of the eastern countries in Europe. So this was kind of the stage that the punk rock found in Eastern Europe. And in Europe, they had a different struggle. There were also communists, and there were like some very bad perspectives in terms of political developments in Europe, such as in Germany. The fall of the wall of Berlin, which brought so much of their nationality and ethnic ideas together so strong. And then in England, unemployment, unemployment and difficulties of enterprise management, nationalism came as an answer, or either as an answer or as part of the problem. And also, the punk rock scene grew very strong in England, in Italy, in France, Spain, and many other places in Western Europe. So that's where we take our influences from. Okay, of course, there's a lot of influences from America too. The pacifist movement, the punk pacifist peace punks in the U.S. exercised a very, very large influence over our scene. Outside some bands, even like hardcore bands, there's a band called Autonomy in LA, which is later in the middle of the 80s, but like they were very important. Also, we had bands such as Dead Kennedys, which was a very influential band here. Not as much as the just pure hardcore violence and negativity, but mostly the political bands. NBC, Dead Kennedys, as I said before, and Autonomy were for us were very important bands. Now we had later on so many other bands that were influential here. Los Cruces from Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. Station from Oregon. Naked Aggression, I think they're from California. I don't remember. I don't know. I mean, they're from California, yeah, but I don't know exactly where they're from, where in California they come from. But yeah, it's a very good and important band because they had very good political lyrics. So we could, like by the time we could translate lyrics and understand what they were saying, we just loved their work. Like they were pretty good bands. There are a lot more bands, that were very cool. But we don't want to be attached to that. We're not talking about the punk rock scene in Brazil and the hardcore scene in Brazil. In the beginning, right, we had bands such as, okay, so you have an idea. Punk rock was so important in Brazil by the end of the 70s that most of the pop musicians in Brazil, and that will include people such as Supla and his band Tokyo, Kid Video and his band is already for and Abisito or whatever the band was he was in. There were bands such as uh, Kizabella, which pretty much had the stereotype of like bands such as Blonde and Television and more pop punk bands from the end of the 70s, from either from America or from the European continent. Um, but the main bands were like to become more popular, and the most popular that popped out of the punk scene was Legião Urbana and Capital Inicial, from Brazil. And they're also the Club Rude band, Club Rude. It's like history, but the punk rock scene is another thing. This band which I just spoke on the last, they were not punk rock bands, but the punk rock bands were very important to the maintenance of a political struggle and organization of the young people in Brazil. By the middle of the 80s, when they started to realize things could change in their daily life, and music would play a very important role on educating, politically educating the young people from the suburbs and from the lower classes. Then there comes, of course, a lot of the bands. I'll tell my friend Ariel from Hasselnada, he was in the gangsters and he's in a gang called the Fear Punch. I have never agreed with gangs in the punk rock scene, but these people are references. So, and there are way more references. I just I'm saying that like these people they became very famous because they had a posture, they had a position before the dictatorship, and they had a voice, and they expressed it, and they influenced a lot of people. People like me who were listening to punk rock music in the 80s would be having an idea of what anarchism and freedom for contestatario movement would be, just according to what this guy did. So eventually I was able to hear Restos de Nada, Conduções de Cadáveres, Invasores de Cérebros, Coiotes Malditos. Well, there are so many bands. And in the South Side here we had a lot of bands too. The most famous band in my area, in the whole southern uh, side of São Paulo, south side of São Paulo, is Florida. It used to be Florida. Right? We have a lot of bands now going on, different bands. So, and the ABC region, which was a place where the industrialized society took over, and then they had a lot of prosperity in the 70s and 80s. And we even had President Lula as a projection of how important the industrial development of the ABC region in São Paulo was to be in our country. Now we have the working class party in control of the political situation, even though but they don't, like it's just a projection. They don't do shit about the working class people. They are a very oppressive government, and they lie an awful lot. And there is a lot of very corrupt politicians coming from the liberal left wing in Brazil, and you don't know these people. But just let you know, there was in our history in the ABC they had bands such as, oh boy, I will remember the gangs first, alright? I remember the people talk about the Infratores from São Bernardo, São Caetano, I'm sorry, Infratores from São Caetano. I even met some of the members in the late 80s, okay, when they no longer existed. But then there is the Anjos do Descer, which was a pretty famous gang, and the one that lasts for long was the people I used to hang out with. I just like those people. I had a pretty good idea of what punk rock could be in the ABC region of São Paulo, Brazil, by having a contact with the Carniças. The Carniças from Mauá. Wow, fucking cool. I remember a lot of people. I remember going to concerts in the ABC region. I went to see Garotos Pobres, which was by the way, no punk rock band. They played a very heavy and thrashy sound, which the punk rockers like it because they went punk. So whenever I went to the ABC and there were Beatles for display, uh, acceptable, they were accepted because they had very political lyrics. I even once went there and followed their song. It was very nice, like. But a few years later, people would change their minds on what skinheads would represent to the scene, and then the skinheads were kicked out of the scene. That included Garotos Progress, Prophecy Cedar from Santa Mara. Santa Mara had a lot of skinheads too, and Cosmic Prophet, and Judas Vixetti. These bands were all rejected, like, and even the bands who were in the old scene that were eventually punk rock bands, they were also kicked out because they made company to skinheads in the beginning of the 80s into the very end of the 80s. So when the scene started to be more politicized, more, let's say, politically correct and correctly political, these guys were just kicked out. We didn't want to know about punk rockers using suspenders and hats, and stuff like that. There was another aesthetic type, uh, and that didn't convey us to use to be part of. So we, by the end of the 80s, made a very, very, very important decision. The punk scene was going to be divided. We would no longer have skinheads hanging out with the punk rockers, and no uh, no representative of right wing parties or groups such as FNB, KFP, and so many other groups and political parties. They wouldn't be accepted in the punk scene. And even the communists, they were kicked out of the scene. I remember seeing the last member of CUT, which is Central Única dos Trabalhadores, hanging out in the punk scene, and his name, he was a very nice guy eventually. But like, we couldn't accept him because he was in put. His name was Maverick. He used to hang out with the punk rockers from the downtown, the SK Punk, which is called the SK Punks, but like down further in the north side of São Paulo, there's also suburbs, and these people were just like us in Santa Maria or in the far away side of the ABC region, just suburban punk rockers, okay? They were more inclined to hardcore. And you know why? Because the language of hardcore had more to do with the working class people. People like me. When I began to hang out in the punk scene, you know what I did as a worker? And what I did for a living? I was a painter. Right on. I was a painter. I painted walls and I had to work with a daily, a heavy task. And many of the people who hang out with me at the time, they would be bricklayers, painters, like people who work hard. These people, for the most part, they were not in the trade union. We were not trade union workers. But yeah, we felt some kind of support from trade unions, anarchist trade unions, that people called Confederação Operária Brasileira, COB. At that time, I remember some of the dudes that used to organize concerts and events and include punk rock bands. Morelli, AW, Isaac, who was co-founder of the MAP from São Paulo, which is Movimento Anarcho-Punk. So this is when the anarcho-syndicalist movement had a very good hold of what happened in the punk scene. There were also a couple of students that participated in the punk scene that would later become anarcho-punks or MAP. Anarcho-punks is not '88 we had a very highly organized and closed group called AAP, Associação Narcopunk. And this one association of punks were mostly composed of hardcore guys who didn't really accept the stereotype of punk rock. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying here is not that we didn't like the punk rock scene, but we saw a difference, like because mostly hardcore guys they had a concept of the world based on okay, we are protesters, we are contestataries, but we don't want to destroy ourselves. We don't want to lose drugs at the beginning. We don't want to hang out with gangs. We don't want to be violent. So the very punk scene or the underground scene, we have an aggressive way of communicating and acting, but we don't hurt each other. Like we have a fight against the oppressors and not against the people, which was often for the gangs. I'll tell you some of the names of the gangs we had to deal with in the end of the 80s, from the middle of the 80s to the end of the 80s. Okay, some are not really bad. I remember a couple of very nice SJ punks, Guga, Ariel, and Zorro, and Claudinha. Okay, uh, but there is a bad side of it too. I remember some nationalist fucking skinheads that were in the SJ punk gang. So what the fuck was going on out there? Like, and the anarcho-punk movement began to question whether the punk rock scene was an anarchist movement or just a flattering movement of people making music and following some kind of rock stars and gangs or whatever, like, so this is the matter. We didn't want to see things the way they were going. We wanted to have a peaceful movement based on the struggle for the rights of the working class, and we had to put these people apart, like, okay, now if we want to get things organized, we have to put these people away. I mean, I'm talking too much. I'm supposed to send you a song. I don't have to be talking too long, like, because it breaks down the barriers of patience. I want to sing a song which would make it feel comfortable, and it's from Insurreição, Sem Esperanças. It was the very first song from Insurreição, right? So Insurreição is a hardcore punk band that formed in '88, in the winter of 1988, with participants belonging to the scene of Santo Amaro hardcore, and Mauá also had a couple of hardcore guys that became part of this band. So it was a very nice enterprise. I was the founder of the band. I named the band, and I invited three other guys that became part of the band. And that time, the Santa Amaro and ABC connection functioned worked very well. So, Sem Esperanças, it's quite an easy song, right? It's supposed to sound like Roosevelt from Sweden, but very slow. So, let's see how it goes. Sou agora, vai ao posto, está cansado, foi gostoso, sai do serviço, esnorteado, se pendura, bem notado, às vezes fala, às vezes pensa, somente fala, não ouve nada, você chora, está presente, a outros rumo, não irá. Saídas, as mais acima, você procura how it sounded in the beginning. Then there are very funny bands that like have different thematic approaches, and one of them I remember very well is it's very known in the south side of Brazil. He's like the Sul, a band named Billywolfgangz. Oh man, that was a very nice band. You know what I saw in that band? I saw a different style of music, not really like the traditional cliche of punk hardcore production, but something new using synthesizers and many other studio resources that made the sound very funky, funny, but really punk and hardcore, and the lyrics are so amazing. I remember Astronauta. Astronauta is a very nice lyric. Okay? So here you go. Quando ela disse agora a lua inteira soube, na hora eu era só um pobre astronauta, trabalhando numa armadura pirata. O chefe era um robô desalmado, ele disse que na lua isso é bem normal. Mulher é coisa rara, pequeno mimado, primeiro golpe não me traz depois trata mal. Não, eu sei, posso esquecer a poeira lunar, ter uma mulher só pra se pensando em todas as mulheres da vida, eu sei o caminho dos seus o que pode manter um astronauta cansado, além de se esquecer que um dia foi amado. Agora quando a lua cresce no céu, aperto com o peito o coração da robô e abençoo toda a indústria eletrônica por ter criado a minha nova esposa fiel. E molho a garganta tentando me livrar das últimas partículas de poeira lunar. A robô então percebe e começa a chorar. Eu tenho medo que ela vá enferrujar também. Não, eu sei que posso voltar, comprar um carro e rodar por aí, rodar por aí. Não, eu sei que posso esquecer poeira lunar, ter uma mulher só pra mim. So this is, it's not the original music. It's just basically what it could do to represent the music from hippie countries or hippie countries that he went to Sul. It's very important then for the southern scene. But of course, not what we were used to listening from Paulo, right? From Paulo was kind of beautiful. We had preserved the very hardcore to the to the goats, scene. And they had bands such as the Botonia, Armageddon, even Cholera, the Birds of Terribles, very good bands. But now we have a little laboratory here in São Paulo, working in by the borders with Santa Mara and Diadema, right there in the middle, like the place from the suburbs south side is joined there in Santa Mara. So we had 4 or 5 bands forming in Santa Mara at that time in the narco-punk scene, right? 1988. And what happened is some of the skinheads didn't like the idea of having a lot of contract based farming in the nest of the northeastern community, which was Santa Amaro. So the first place that the skinheads managed to plot down and destroy in the punk scene in São Paulo was eventually, it was not the ABC, neither was it Santana. It was Santo Amaro, right? Santo Amaro suffered the first most oppressive charges of the Nazi movement in terms of punk rock culture and hardcore culture. So we were hardly persecuted. And I mean, everybody was. In the end of the 80s, a very strong right-wing movement rise in São Paulo, right? Which people call the white power section of the skinheads. It began in Mauá, curiously. A lot of people who played in my band came from Mauá. I'd named them Carlinhos, Sapo, Mendigo, and I met many other people in Mauá, like Javali Gato was like a zoo in Mauá. And the Carniças, like I went along there to see and I met a lot of cool people. But the Mauá people were very like similar to the country in Santo Amaro, given their social, cultural, and mind conditions and what they manifested in terms of punk culture. Much more hardcore, like much more offensive and aggressive and a bit more intensive also, like hardcore is not just about punching and kicking and whatever. It's also about intuition and perception and there's a lot of a critical view of the society you live in. So Santa Mara suffered very strong charges by the time the 80s ended, 89, 90. I was one of the few survivors of the scene, and I was attacked several times in the street by police and skinheads and even the population. When the thing goes to conservative, like they tend to attack anything that is different or everything that moves differently. But now some bands really stayed and laid back and said, okay, we don't want to respond, we don't want to answer to that now, we want to get away. And my band remained month after month in a very oppressive time in the scene. But it was good because by the time the 90s began, we had gathered a very good uh, quality of punk rockers and hardcore that were really focused on political struggles. And it was very interesting because we met at Stefan Luiz at the time, and we were a lot of fun, right? From Pirituba to Jundiaí on the west side, from uh, let's say from Brás to Mogi das Cruzes, Poá, or even Suzano on the east side, from São Caetano to Sertãozinho on the ABC side, from Brooklyn to Valo Velho and Grajaú on the other south in the extreme, like so. It joined a very good uh, group of people coming from all different parts, and the main thing is we didn't have a gang, and we already had this political structure that we created in the 3 last years of the 80s. So it was a legacy for us that we started that way. Now I'm going to play a song for you that represents kind of a feeling we had in that time from my band into a song called Não Precisamos de Líderes. We don't need no fucking leaders, okay? So the lyric is from my brother Carlinhos, which was the singer of the band at the time it began. But then we broke apart, and then he went his way, I went my way, and I restarted the band again. He doesn't even know who do exist. Whatever happens, if you get to listen to this video, which I don't even understand, I'll say hi to you and congratulations for your children in the past. Não precisamos de vídeo. Lo que fazer, não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Cada dia, cada ele conhecer e lutar contra todas as forças que o tornam um alienado. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Nós temos que nos unir para destruir o sistema e construir um mundo de igualdade para todos. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. Não precisamos de líderes para governar nossas mentes. And so on. It's like really punkish, but a hardcore song, right? And I don't want to take too long. It's been already how many minutes? I don't know. It doesn't show it. Okay, it's quite a few minutes. I'm gonna retake it later on and comment more about the history of the anarcho-punk movement in Brazil and in particular in São Paulo, where I lived and experienced all the things that the scene had created. But good enough for you is to know that he created a very enhanced, like connected federation of plants in Brazil, which in no other country had been conceived. By the end of the 80s, right? So we had cells of this movement, not terrorist cells, right? We were pacifists. We didn't do any kind of violent action. We did a lot of protests against the traditional nuclear weaponry and ballot weaponry, against the investments on military structures. Like we wanted the people to be fed. We wanted the people to have education, and we wanted the people to have good pay for their work. So we didn't give a fucking crap about nuclear plants and nuclear oxides and nothing from uranium. But I guess, like nowadays, I don't know, the oil culture and the economy based on oil gotta end, buddy. And nowadays, the nuclear energy is more useful than oil because oil is not renewable and that affects the environment so hardly. We have a project to build more than 20 plants of energy in Brazil based on the course of the water. So the environment along the rivers are going to be just all fucked up, and nature is going to lose a lot of it. Right now I'm thinking that nuclear plants could do the work very well, and unfortunately, right, because if we don't do that, our environment and ecological balance is going to be lost forever. Brazilian people, wake up. This is a different time now. What we're creating to our children in the future, nothing. We can do nothing. Just letting them people who make a lot of money out of this kind of environment do whatever they want, and we don't act in any way. Anyway, okay. But I want to finish this speech reading for you a song which is from the new Slave song, right? Another Slave song. And it's pretty much a goth hardcore song. Um, it's a little bit depressive, but don't worry about it. I'm really happy. Just take this song as a passage of time in my life, which was very rough. I was starting to learn German Und das war Berat für mich. Sagst du mich nicht? Ich sage euch, die Lehnung von der deutschen Sprache ist sehr hart. Es war für mich. But then I could learn some things. All right. I'll sing two songs to leave you alone. It's going to be Vaterland and then Crystal Nacht. Vaterland from Portuguese from Germany, Deutsche Franz. And Crystal Nacht is a music I made. Don't worry, the lyrics of Crystal Nacht is in English. Vaterland in German. Som ville marschera med braunen mage, som marschera med glass och tage. Till som ville auf Freuders Mage, Gottes Land, mein Vaterland. Gottes Wagen mit braunen Mage, du mir liebst meine Land. Gegen mein Vaterland, liebst meine Land. Gegen Gottes Vaterland. Wie lange betrogen vergangen ist, habe ich mein Vaterland nicht erkannt. Würdest du begeistert sein, ich frag mich, du wenn du von geweiht, du mir liebst meine Hand. Yeah, mein Vaterland, du liebst meine Hand. Gegen Gottes Vaterland. Wie an dem passiert, ist weg, einen bequemen Weg. Gleich in die Klemme und sie kommt wenn schon von mich alles Stimme, du mir liebst meine Land. Gegen mein Vaterland, du liebst meine Land. Gegen Gottes Vaterland. Liebe deine Land, liebe deine Land, liebe deine Land. No, Crystal Nacht. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You live in Varsovia, and across the street from where you live, there's a person you love. It doesn't matter who is he or she, or what is he or she. And suddenly a war breaks out, and you are taken prisoners. Each one of you go to a different place, but you're never gonna be the person you love anymore. So as the war lasts, the feeling is, are we ever gonna be able to see each other again? And what is this war gonna bring to our lives? And the destruction of affection between people, like of the putting people far away just because they belong to different ethnic, racial, or social groups. So this is what happened to Germany, and we don't want to see that again. I totally respect and I'm in agreement with the German culture. I study Runic symbols and German history. I try to speak German. I can somehow communicate in German. I like a lot of bands from Germany. Procure and Inferno, the Totenhausen, for which I play hip hop character. Very interesting music. Kanal Terror with the music. Wunderbar. Yogi Ho, Dunkelan, die Wege des Tages das Konsulhaus vor die 500 Mann kann wir dabei. Das letzte Lied des Longenshall und so ein Durst, so welche Qual. Tag ein, Tag aus, wer weiß wohin, und ohne dir hat keinen Sinn, ganz allein Indumikuna, Hasduos, Darangeda, the tall fountain, the sacred shrine, well here, the labor wine, and so on. It's very interesting music, right? I love singer Rhino, even though he's kind of patriotic, it's kind of messed up, but he's a good singer, he's a good musician, and he sings about the values of a country, of a nation, which I respect. Besides the fact that half a dozen of men tried to build a movement to destroy the image of the young people who live in the country. So the German people is always like that. You don't have to embellish your clothing with Thorhammer symbols or Soviet symbols or the SS insignias to be a German. You know, you don't have to be a fucking Nazi to love your country because I know many people out there who just really love the little German country, eventually the great German country, but they don't have to act as fools because they respect every nation in the world. You don't have to be a Nazi in order to be in love or to respect and love your own country, right? You can have a feeling of national sovereignty. It sounds weird for an anarchist to say a single such, but yes, you can be you can love your country. You can even be nationalist, but not the way the masses way. Like, that was fucking weird, dude. You owe a lot of people explanations for what you did in history. You motherfucking assholes. Now let me sing out my song, which is about the Night of the Christmas, the Noite dos Cristais, where a lot of people were burned and killed and persecuted and violated. And it's awful, but we have to talk about it. If we don't comment what people did in the past and we don't protest against it, we're pretty much surely gonna do that all over again because mankind and in particular fanatics, they have short memory and they don't know what the fuck their attitudes can do to people's lives. So I don't think they would uh, keep from doing the same shit they have done in history. I think they have to be kept apart. And the one way we find to do this is just like warn people who have been done already, so they can like have an idea of what the fuck's going on here. This guy is trying to take over again. No fucking way. Peaceful not. Barricades to keep us apart. Bombs and tension up in the streets. We cannot prevent each other. And it's the bullets of the powder. Close your eyes to see no need. It's always
Alô, pessoal, eu estou vendo que é possível viver aí por cento da formação. Simples que hoje, para ganhar 2 milhões de dólares por mês, em seguida, ele construiu um governo usando um programa. Você pode ver que o Gás Plane, atualmente está em posição 3.228. Vamos escolher boletas. Clique em meta e vamos escolher uma mesa que queremos jogar em 10 apostas. Seja mínimo 5.500 dólares. Clique aqui. Vamos começar a ganhar. Você gostar de 10 dólares e girar a roleta. Caímos no vermelho, nós perdemos a aposta. Agora subimos na apenas $20. Gire a roleta. Caímos no preto, nós ganhamos. Mude a cor e aposte $10 no vermelho. Isso significa que quando ganhamos, nós trocamos de